This is Matt Zoller Seitz, TV critic for New York Magazine and Vulture. I'm talking to Sam Esmail, the showrunner and director of Homecoming. Adapted from the podcast by Eli Horowitz and Micah Bloomberg, this is a limited-run thriller about a top-secret government project.
What happened?
It has action set in 3 time periods and some very stylized visual storytelling.
What's going on? Say something.
Why this particular project, and you know what drew you to it originally?
I mean, most thrillers I think that are made today are more action thrillers. They're actually basically action films with some twists and turns, with some dramatic scenes in between set pieces. And it's really more an excuse to sort of make a more dramatic action film than it is to make a thriller. And the thrillers that I kind of grew up on watching, these are sort of more thrillers based on characters and based on relationships and the secrets that they kind of kept from one another. A character moment that you witness in one scene becomes the twist later on, and that was something about Homecoming that really actually took me by surprise, because I had not seen it before, but it also, you know, in that refreshing way, it had this like throwback feel to those character-based thrillers that really inspired me to be a filmmaker in the first place. So I just wanted to jump on the opportunity to kind of do my own version of that. I love that it was sort of inadvertently a throwback thriller.
Throughout the entire series, you do a lot of long takes. What are the advantages? What do you gain from shooting the scene in that particular way, as opposed to the standard way of like, here is the character, here is her environment, here's the person who's coming in to talk to her?
I'm going to give you a weirdly pretentious answer, but I often dream in long takes, and like dreams don't have cuts for me. And when I think about a scene and when I think about a mood, I want to go as long as possible, because I feel like a cut breaks the thought. I feel like a cut breaks the tone, and I feel like a cut it has to be meaningful. I'm not a fan of these kind of very cutty, handheldy kind of films or TV shows where every cut is just essentially every half second or 2 seconds or whatever, where you're desensitized to it.
Give it a break, man.
But in the opposite end of that, when it's not cutting, when it is this sort of long take, I think it brings me into more of a dream state. The great films, the films I grew up loving, are the ones that do that to me, where I leave the theater thinking I've just watched a memory or a dream or something just flowed into my subconscious. There's a thing that I think it does on a subliminal level that takes you into the scene and really puts you in this more subconscious state with the show, and something as psychological as what we're trying to do with this show. I think in the sort of this subtle menace that starts to grow as you continue watching the show, that was really important to me. The decision to sort of let that run, whatever happens, the last scene, and then after that, there's like sort of real-time snapshot of whatever that scene is, continues on as the credits go. There's a lingering effect that I think it has, and that's what I felt when I listened to the podcast. There's just this. It's not this wow ending or this cliffhanger necessarily. It's really just about this sort of more subliminal, underneath the conscious feeling that's starting to bubble up to the surface. And I felt like there was something more menacing about that, that really, really kind of pushed specifically the psychological horror of what's going on with these men in the facility.
I believe every episode ends with I guess you would say a meditative kind of moment, like the action itself, like the action proper has concluded, but you're letting people continue to exist in the space. And in some cases, it's after the important characters have left.
What about the name Walter Cruz? Do you remember him?
No.
There's something about it that that feels unsettling, but not overtly so. You know, part of me was also playing with the form of this binge model. I knew that on Amazon it was going to be all dropped in one day. And I think everyone's inclination as the credits start rolling is to just hit next, ignore all the credits, etc. And I didn't want that for the show. I wanted that feeling that this is going to wash over you, that something's bubbling and it's growing, and that's part of the reason why we did that.
I wondered if there was a tactical, kind of a tactical reason for doing that as well, where it's like, you know, we're not going to be in a rush here. We're going to sit here and think about what we've seen, and I'm going to make you do that.
You're looking for someone who won't hold back, who is willing to build their life around this work. That is me. That is what I want. I am ready to just put my whole heart into this and give it everything I've got from beginning to end. Absolutely.
I mean, look, it wasn't tactical. I mean, I'm not trying to just disrupt the binge model or anything like that. I just felt it worked for this story because of the way the story is constructed. Again, it's not these wham bam cliffhanger moments. It's this very slow burn, kind of bubbling to the surface. You know, the menace is kind of right around the corner. And you're also, you know, look, we're also dealing with memory. And when I say, and that's why, again, going back to the long take, the question about long takes, and it's the same thing with the lingering endings, because we felt like that matched what was going on with Heidi and what was going on with the men in the facility.
That's a perfect segue to ask you about the use of music. You as you did on Mr. Robot, you often directly quote the movies that you're inspired by, and you do it here from the very beginning, where you've got a piece of music from, I believe, Dress to Kill, right, in that opening sequence.
Yeah, no, we use a lot of Pino Donaggio, but that's basically the opening cue to Dress to Kill, is the opening cue to Homecoming.
How do you decide to do that? I mean, I know certain directors like Martin Scorsese does it, Quentin Tarantino does it, but of course, you know, there's some like argument about whether or not it's too much, or it's too much hanging a label on things to tell people what you were inspired by.
Well, here's what happened. So as I was talking to my creative team about the tone, and what I typically do is reference a lot of films, and kind of make my DP and costume designer, production designer, watch these films. And a lot of the films were De Palma, Pakula, Scorsese, Hitchcock, Kubrick, list goes on. And then when it came to talk about music, I bristled at the idea of asking a composer to ape that music or that tone. There was something about it that just felt wrong to me. It felt like it would just, the best version of that would just feel incredibly derivative. And music, you know, from my Mr. Robot days, it's something that I know is the kind of the heart and soul of a piece. It's really the thing that really drives home the tone.
Does anyone have any questions I can answer?
I didn't want it to be a sound alike of these sort of old school thrillers that I really wanted the tone to feel like. So I said, well, why not use the real thing?
I wanted to ask you about some of the scenes where he's basically being a detective. You spend a lot of time situating him in his environment, and you also have a subsequent scene where he's in a warehouse. It's like the warehouse at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark or Citizen Kane, or it's like something out of the Orson Welles version of The Trial. It's like this. Where the hell was that thing? Like the characters of the office, the warehouse, all anything involving documents. It seems like you've put a lot of thought into how that's going to be designed, how it's going to be photographed, where you're going to put the camera.
When I think about any sequence or scene, I want to think about it in terms of how it enhances that character's point of view. And this was Carrasco's world. To put him in an actual, real, office space, in an office basement, with files, just felt not as challenging to a Carrasco who could devour paper records within minutes and can find the information very quickly. I wanted it to feel like this monolithic thing that Carrasco, was going to be challenged by, and even if it maybe strained credulity, I never minded that because to me it felt real with Carrasco. It felt real through Carrasco's point of view, that's what this feels like to him, this kind of big undertaking, and he's going to have to climb Mount Everest to find to find the information he's looking for.
You start on a wide shot of the office, and there's a 30-second slow zoom on him as he calls Gloria on the phone.
In order to get that effect, we had to kind of boost up his chair because, if you look at the other employees, you wouldn't be able to see any of their faces. So we kind of boosted them up a little bit. And I remember on set, I think especially the camera operator, that's going to look funny. That's going to look like we boosted them up. And for me, it was, again, worth the payoff. Yes, it's a little off. It's a little surreal. But the idea of the shot is that he is sort of this cog in this monstrous, bureaucratic, red tape nightmare. And the shot doesn't work if you can't see that his eyes are just slightly above water there, and so to me, I always abandon logic for emotion. If it feels real, if it feels like what I'm going for, then we sort of abandon reality a little bit and go for that.
You're using all the latest technology to shoot your television shows, and yet a lot of the way that you talk about directing and about these characters, it's almost like an old movie kind of approach where you're kind of thinking, how can I use lighting or how can I use composition to express an idea? It's like you're dealing in metaphors here almost.
Isn't that what a film is? Isn't it a metaphor? Isn't it filled with symbolism? That's the best use of the visual medium is that we're creating a story with images, and that look, obviously there's many other components to it, but that's the kind of birth of it, right? I mean, obviously from the dawn of time there wasn't even sound. There was silent. It was just silent films, and it was about these images collected together, edited together in such a way that told you the story. And when we talked about doing the show, we talked about how every image, and this is what I mean when I talk about the long take, how every image and every cut needs to say something.